Lover, and welcome back to Breaking Waves. We hope you've been having a wonderful Monday and start to your week. On today's show, we have a very special guest, Aupito William Seal, former Member of Parliament of the Labour Party, former politician, and also the CEO of Mahi Moana. Talofa lava Aupito. Thank you very much for coming to our show today. How has the start of your week been?
It's been fantastic. I was up north watching the Blues versus Fiji and really enjoyed that. Met up with our Pacific communities as they launched their Pacific Fusion.
Fusion,
which will take place this coming weekend.
Awesome. What's Pacific Fusion? Just a bit of insight on
it's
it.
A celebration of Pacific peoples, all things good and positive up in Whangarei and up north.
Oh, that's awesome. It's good you're there, but I see you're everywhere based on your social media pages. And someone just calling you earlier today for a meeting that wasn't planned, and you having to remind them to check their diaries. So that's been really good. You've come out of politics. What are some of the things you're working on now? I know one for sure is Mahi Moana, which is very, very exciting. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Mahi Moana is an exciting organisation by some of our senior artists who are trying to find ways of promoting more of their creative skills and more of our cultural lenses. There's a number of projects that they've been involved with. I better not make those announcements at this point in time, but it's really just using arts and culture in our leadership roles, whatever that leadership role might be, but also looking at how to protect the next crop of geniuses, whether it be music, storytelling, digital technology type storytelling, just giving them the opportunity and sharing stories to make sure that they are well protected and make an income out of their arts and creative geniuses. And they're also helping me download some of my old creative juices that it might have remained dormant while I was a politician.
They're now awakened now that you've left, because you can do and say what you want. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, and then there's two other things, really just helping our young people in my family sort of leadership transition, looking at healthy living and looking at also career pathways. And the third thing would be I'm excited about the Kingitanga relationship and trying to build better relationships with Māori and the Pacific communities.
Yes, because it's Mahi Moana, right? So work in the ocean, work across our seas.
Work across the oceans.
Yeah, work across the oceans. And that's very interesting. So it's about protecting, young leaders, providing them with an opportunity to use their creativity in their leadership.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think the creativity isn't just about the arts. It's also about spiritual connections. It's about learning your genealogy, being grounded in who you are, understanding your Indigenous experiences and the learnings from the past that you can still use today. I say in a short form, it's about Indigenous leadership using Indigenous knowledge. That's what Mahi Moana is about. So it's not just that creative side, it's also looking at the kind of leadership that we want for the future in whatever field. Large part of it is about helping our young people decolonize their thinking and strengthening the link back to their roots. Because I think when you know your genealogy, when you know the stories of your family, it helps strengthen your mana and dignity as a person, and also your own internal confidence about who you are.
Absolutely. And, we've seen it a lot. A lot of young people are struggling to form that identity. And I love the work that you're doing. I love the work that a lot of our social advocates are doing, and trying to connect and bringing our history back, our fasino manga, and understanding those kind of things.
Absolutely.
And I guess that's why I really look up to this work, because, it's our partnership also with Māori. And there's a lot of history unknown to a lot of young people about the relationship. Let's talk about Samoa. It's specifically because me and you are both Samoan. the very intricate relationship between Maori and Samoan people throughout time that we don't know of. But I'm sure if a lot of our young people knew about it, you know, it would help them be more confident in themselves.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, you know, with a lot of the, I would call it chaotic, the chaotic questioning around the Te Tiriti o Waitangi, what are some of the histories that you know that help solidify where you stand in this issue? Mm.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. There's a history there between Māori and Pacifica that is long-standing, and
Mm.
not enough of our younger generation know that history. Most Māori, and particularly if you talk to the head of the Māori Language Commission,
Mm.
they'll talk to you about the 5,000 year migration story from Asia into the center of the Pacific, and from their disbursements into the east, up north, and then back down again.
Mm.
And that's a generally accepted. It's in today's world, you can now um, back that up with DNA, genealogy, and other migrational stories in terms of the waves and the people who moved in.
Mm.
That's the way that the Pacific have been traversing the vast Pacific Ocean, settling down in the different islands, way before the European adventurers and
Mm.
explorers landed. I mean, when they landed, somehow they said they discovered Samoa and Tonga and
Exactly.
all.
Mm.
When these are people that had already settled and created societies, created structures for how to live peacefully, how to trade. Māori has a long history of trading, not just with the Pacific, but even with Australian Aborigines. We now know that today. So that's a history that we don't talk about, but it's an important history if you want to better understand relationships between Pacifica and Māori.
Mm.
And then, of course, Samoa was one of the first countries to become independent. It didn't just automatically become independent in
Mm.
1962. Uh, New Zealand had played a very a colonial part in that. 1914 in August, they sent down about 2,000 expeditionary forces, landed on Samoa, took down the German flag, and then raised the British jack. And that was the end of the First World War for Samoa. And
Right.
then from 1914 to 1962, New Zealand was the administrator of Samoa on behalf of the British government. And they did some terrible things.
Mm.
In 2002, Helen Clark apologized for the way that New Zealand administered Samoa, for the flu, for allowing the flu to enter Samoa, devastated that population, for the killing of peaceful marchers, which included one of our paramount chiefs
Mm.
during that time. Terrible, terrible atrocities for the way they conducted, forced people off the village in Satapuala to establish the airport there,
Mm.
which impacted on my relatives because my mum's side is from Satapuala. Rape and pillage, that's the kind of history that New Zealand did and conducted on Samoa. And then it was in those days where you had two Māori politicians, Sir Maui Pomare,
Mm.
Apirana Ngata, who were outspoken in defending Samoa and speaking up for Samoa and speaking up in support of the Mau movement.
Mm. Mm.
And Tupua said to me that when his was it grandfather was banished from Samoa, this is what New Zealand did. If you were opposing the administrators at the time,
Mm.
they'd strip you of your matai titles, which mean that they strip you of your land.
Mm.
And if you persisted in agitating against the colonial power at the time,
Mm.
they'd imprison you. They'd banish you from the islands and imprison you in Mount Eden. And so Tupua's relatives were imprisoned there, plus many others. And it was Māori who visited them, gave them
Mm.
comfort.
Mm.
Again, those names, Sir Maui Pomare, Apirani Ngata, the Mahuta clan, the Kingitanga family. the Malietoa clan also said to me that when they sent through their young leaders for education, again, Princess Tupuya, those are the names of the royal family from Tainui, who visited them, gave them blankets, made sure that they were looked after, because they were here in a foreign land for the
Exactly.
first time, away from family, and so all of that happened. I know when Princess Tupuya passed away in the 1950s, the Malietoa clan sent through Toa Salamasina,
Mm.
and there was an exchange of gift. Toa Salamasina presented a fine mat on behalf of Malietoa clan and Samoa, and the Tainui family reciprocated with the walking stick of Princess Tupuya. And of course, when Malietoa Tanumafili II passed away, the King Itu Heitia, and their delegation visited there
Mm.
and returned that mat from the 1950s. I saw it, and it gave me goosebumps to see a mat, because it still had, I think, 1954, 1958 on it.
Wow. I'd probably get goosebumps too.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so, they returned that mat, and they said, "Will we get Princess Tapuya's walking stick?" I says, "You can ask, but
Mm.
I suspect the family would just give you a different mat."
Mm.
Um, and so, all of that, that's part of our history that we don't talk often about, and it's because it's not been taught in our curriculum in our schools.
Right, right.
More recently, with in my time as a minister for Pacific Peoples, always aware that we've got to be supportive of Māori. They are tangata whenua. We make use of their skills and te reo. We promote New Zealand using, te reo Māori, using their arts, using their knowledge. And so for me, these are our relatives. And now today, 20% of the Pacific population whakapapa back to Māori. I know also that there was a time when New Zealand were part of the First World War and the Second World War,
Mm.
and Sir Maui Pomare promised 2,000 Maori soldiers, and that was a time when the Crown authorities were fighting Māori and forcibly taking land by changing legislation. Many Māori didn't want to be part of that.
Mm.
So Sir Maui Pomare turned to the Pacific, and the Pacific responded by sending, for Cook Islands, we now know 500 soldiers from Cook Island, with Niue 150 soldiers, and then there were a number of individuals from different parts of the island that came, and they were identified as part of the Māori battalion. So for a long, long time, we didn't know that these were Cook Islanders, Niueans who were part of that. Many of them didn't see battle. They died from the flu, from sores, not used to wearing boots, some of them, they weren't trusted to be given rifles. They were just given a spade, dig trenches, so died through all of that. But they contributed to the World War I and World War II as part of the Māori battalion. We've identified the Cook Islanders, the Niuean and others, but they're still people who are still, their names are still lost as part of the Māori battalion, or included in the Māori battalion. And I got a chance to visit Belgium, where all of these graves are, and the Māori battalion are remembered in awe, with so much respect by Belgium, because of the defense of them and their society against the Germans during those wars. So well known for that.
Absolutely.
And then in modern times, there's been a lot of work and support from Māori for Pacifica. When I was leading the government's Dawn Raids apology, I turned to Ngāti Whātua Orake and asked them for support to provide us the culture protection in doing the whonga. It was very much something that they had not heard about. but they wanted to be part of that. And I felt that they gave me their blessing to be able to conduct a ceremony in a very unique way of incorporating the whonga as the centerpiece, but also involving all our other Pacific cultures. So there's a lot in it that we don't know, and the challenge always, I would say to our young people, they must learn about Māori history. They must
Absolutely.
learn about these connections. And if your schools aren't providing that, it's up to the parents to demand that their schools teach that. In my time as a minister, we made sure that New Zealand history, including the history of the Pacific, be part of the New Zealand curriculum.
I think it definitely should be part of the curriculum, you know, because especially for first generation migrants, you know, a lot of them are coming, not only Pacific Islanders, even Indians and Chinese people who come here are here to make money or to survive. And usually when families who, you know, are focused on trying to make an income to bring their family over or provide a safe home, history is kind of like a back thought in their minds or prioritizing that. So it's important that it is part of the curriculums, and it's important that I think it should just be more present. What are some ways you feel that we could help bring this history?
Oh, look, I think people have got to ask for it. Parents have got to ask for it. I believe that if you don't know the history of who you are, that you're not going to be a strong individual in terms of your own identity.
Right.
So I think parents have got to ask for it. Parents got to be willing to talk that history. Family history is where you begin from.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think for groups working in New Zealand, they've got to engage with Māori to learn the history of the land. You know, I hear so many BS stories about how land was sold for blankets and tobacco. That's not
Oh,
true.
that's such a narrative.
The reality is the Crown stole land. All of the land that is called your national parks and conservation areas, those were Māori land taken by the Crown. And often they would sign the treaty, but then change the legislation to make it easy for them to take land. And if you weren't supportive of the Crown took by force through soldiers. All of this land around here belonged at one point in time to the chiefs of Tainui. And so, and even when Māori settle their treaty settlements, there's a lot of land that remains in the hands of the government.
Right.
They've regifted it because of the fact that they believe that everybody should benefit from the usage of our national parks, etc. So I think it's parents need to be demanding of their schools to teach local history.
Yes.
History of the people and the lands to their young people. But we've also got to make a concerted effort. Don't just live here because you've been given a bed and a home and a job. You know, if you're going to make this your home, be interested in the people and the struggles of the local iwis that you're engaging with, and be respectful of that. Just because you bought a land with your own money doesn't mean that you have every right to just treat it in a disrespectful way. You
Absolutely.
have to remember that for many Māori who were disestablished off their land, going back now and finding wealthy businesses, people who are owning that land, makes it quite challenging to regroup with your iwi and others. So, and for our community, just don't be ignorant.
Exactly. And you know, I'm sure you've heard it before. Kua Māori, you know, leave the Māori to the Māori, leave the Samoans to us. And I think there is a certain layer of ignorance onto that. But it's so hard to have those conversations like we're having now about the histories, why they're important, and how to be a valued member in Aotearoa.
You have to remember, Māori came to our aid. This is the history. And the elders always said, they who come to my aid in times of struggle, o kingo, koko, iwi, maango, they are family. And so you have to remember that. And even though we may not fully appreciate all of that, I think it's incumbent on all of us. If we are calling New Zealand our home, we must be ready to stand and support Māori stand and learn about the struggles of Māori,
Absolutely.
and don't be making judgments about ko wala ko ia, whaila ko ia.
Mm,
Learn about it, and that's going to be an important first step.
absolutely. You know, we've spoken about how important it is for Pasifika to have a good partnership with Maori, which is basically highlighting how much work there needs to be done. And, you know, work that needs to be done by a lot of people, not just, you know, one person. So for people who are wanting to contribute to this work, you know, to step into, I don't like to call it an industry, but as, you know, social advocacy, what are the realities of being in that space?
In the
Social advocacy, promoting, you know, Māori and Pasifika partnerships.
oh, let's not get confused.
Mm,
Māori and all the iwis have their own structures and focus. If you if you take the time to have a look at what Māori are doing, they focus on language and culture, passing that on to their next generation. Focus on health and well-being. They focus on investment and property development, generating streams of income,
right.
and focus on the next generation. And that's a beautiful thing that I think that for specific families, we must follow suit. At the moment, we're not. Most of our families, they are just, there's no planning for the future. Um, Very rarely have I come across families who are thinking about what happens if the son of the family dies?
Mm,
Who replaces them? Who looks after them? Do we have life insurance? Who is there a will to pass on the family home to the 9 kids? So I think this is a conversation first and foremost. And if you don't have that conversation, then what you're seeing is families in need,
mm,
families without leadership, families where there's family violence is rife and nobody is providing leadership, families where of single parents not
mm.
getting that kind of support. So that's what is happening. And when there aren't enough jobs, there aren't good paying jobs,
Yes.
where do you turn to?
Mm,
If your families can't provide it, you turn to government departments for support, or you turn to Salvation Army for support, or a host of other providers. And I think this is where things have emerged in what you're calling that sector,
mm,
because over the years, when the job markets are not available, when there are too many people unemployed or they're not getting paid an income that can support and sustain them, then of course they're going to be out in the streets looking for help.
right.
And look, government departments provide some help. Social providers, NGOs provide a lot of help. Our churches need to do a little bit more in that regard. But I think families must take responsibility and start planning for the future in the way that I've seen Māori do their planning. And I think there's an opportunity, a lot of learnings from us, not only learning the history of Māori, but learning also how Māori are trying to support their whānau. How can we work together, particularly when our genealogies are connecting again?
Mm. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think that's very important. And this leads me on to my next question. This is more centered towards this South Auckland youth community.
Okay.
You know, there's a strong distaste for political affiliation, especially with South Auckland youth, and a fear of being associated with whether it be a party or a certain politician. Could you give us your thoughts on why the political realm is still valid for change, for making impact and change?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of our young people don't like politics because of the nature of the, argumentative nature of politics. The reality is politicians argue, but you don't see them hitting themselves in the head with
Yeah.
2x4s, you know. So and that tension, that arguments, is a natural part of debate and conflict. And if you want to be in politics, you cannot fear that.
Mm.
But I want people to be confident. You can have arguments and debates and still have good relationships. And I've been able to really, attack somebody inside the house, and we can laugh and joke about it afterwards. And so I think it must come. The question must come by that fear of seeing politicians doing that on TV, on radio,
Yes. Yeah.
etc. The reality is that's the political system that we have.
Mm.
And if you want to change that, then you're going to have to campaign around what kind of political system will you have? And I think I'm not sure that they can find an answer by being all nicey to one another.
Mm.
The nature of politics is debating ideas, and then the group that has the best ideas give that idea support, and that's how decisions are run by government. So if there's not enough of you
Yeah.
who can gather around and build up confidence in an idea, then you can't be part
Move
of
along.
this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I've heard so many times, and I think it comes from that fear of the confrontational nature of politics.
Mm.
And I'd say, look, get over it.
Yeah.
And if you want to play politics, you don't need to behave in that way, but you've got to have some good ideas, and you've got to be sensible about how to bring these ideas into reality.
Yeah.
You take it into Parliament debates it, and the majority will vote for it.
Mm. And I think you've focused a lot on how good your idea is, but another aspect to that is also rallying people to support that.
Yeah.
And making it a good enough idea is probably hard work in itself.
Yeah, so you can't you can have great ideas, but to change it in the political arena, you need a party to support it. So you can't help but choose whether it's National, Labour,
Yes.
Green Party, ACT. And so to say we can't be any of that, well then,
Yeah.
good luck with your ideas, because for political change, we have a party system, not an independent individual system. We've got a party system, and the parties must take your ideas and promote it there. But I suppose if it's fear of confronting each other, then don't wear the colours.
Yeah. Exactly.
Share your ideas.
Yeah.
Don't go to the rally.
Exactly.
Don't go fundraising.
Yeah. I think another thing as well is I think a lot of youth have a hard time trying to conceptualize in their minds that this party does this, but I have an idea that could possibly work in this party, how they split their identity from the party, if that makes sense. Have you ever come across that in your career? I'm sure you have in your younger days.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of all the political parties have youth wings.
Right.
And I think that's where you test those ideas out. But our systems are designed so that those ideas, will have to go through a process where it gets tested, it gets beat around, tested again, before the leadership of the party decide, let's take this idea and develop it and implement it. So I suspect as young people, once upon a time, we'd all wanted to push things faster, but it just doesn't happen. And some always say, "Fesili muri mai ia mo mai,"
Yeah.
take your time.
Tell us a bit about that. Thank you so much, Aupito. We appreciate you coming onto our show and sharing your wisdom. We have a lot of people sharing their alofa, saying kia ora, South Pacifica, and hashtag Polynesians. But thank you so much for sharing your wealth of wisdom with us and the knowledge that you've attained through your life path. Is there any last words that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Oh, look, I think it's great that young people are interested in Māori Pacifica relationship, interested in politics. But don't turn up because it's the fad at everybody. take your time, and you've got to remember these are lifelong issues.
Mm.
And learning about Māori is not something that you do at once. You've got to be consistent, got to turn up when nobody else turns up. And
Mm.
so stay strong, everybody, and we'll catch up on the streets.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Like, subscribe, and follow our YouTube. We'll be releasing some TikTok soon. Thank you for tuning in.